Good morning, everybody, and welcome to Policy and Practice's latest webinar. You're very welcome here today, and the topic today is introducing the UBBC 3.0 Universal Benefit and Budgeting Calculator, and we're delighted to have so many of you joining us this morning. And before we start, I just want to go through a little bit of housekeeping with you, if I may. First of all, for those, just so that we can check, please, that the audio is working and you can hear us all correctly. If you could please raise your digital hand in the panel on the right-hand side and give me a little wave. And as you're doing that, thank you very much. As you're doing that, can I just remind you that in the same panel on the right-hand side, do have a look around. There's a facility there for you to ask questions, and we always like people to ask as many questions as possible throughout the webinar, which we're recording, and we will be sending you later this afternoon. During the webinar, we're going to have 2 polls, and then there's a very short 3-question survey at the end of the webinar, and we'd be very grateful if you could give us your feedback. We'd be delighted with that. We aim to have you on your way by 11:30 this morning, and we have a huge amount to get through. So apologies in advance for the amount of stuff that we're going to cover. Now, if I can just have the next slide, I can show you a lovely visual of our speakers. And today you are joined by Deven Ghelani, who is the CEO and founder of Policy and Practice. And Deven is joined by Zoe Charlesworth, who is our Policy and Product Manager at Policy and Practice, and also Leonardo Kellaway. And we must be kind to Leo because it's his birthday today. He is a Policy and Research Manager at Policy and Practice. So welcome, everybody. Thank you very much for joining us. And I'm now going to hand over to Deven.
Great. Thank you so much, Janet, and thank you everyone for joining us on this webinar. I'll talk through the agenda just by talking through, I think, the story of why we wanted to host this webinar. Now, back in 2012 was when I founded Policy and Practice, and it was really with the idea of making the welfare system simple for people to understand in a way that helps people to make the decisions that are right for them. And fundamentally, when I started the company, what I saw out there was that there were systems out there that helped people to calculate what was happening within the benefit system, but fundamentally you had to be an expert in the benefit system to use those. And I think some of what Policy and Practice has been able to bring into the marketplace is just this idea of the complexity of the benefit system being taken out of people's lives and just giving them the information they need to make the decisions that are right for them. I think just to talk briefly through the evolution, that was way back in 2012. The first version I built modeled universal credit. And what I found when I put it up there was just by asking as few questions as possible, you could get to the end of a calculation in less than a dozen questions initially. And by having a really engaging, visually engaging user interface, it was a really powerful tool. And once I put it up there, within 3 months, I was getting 30,000 hits a month. I was getting lots of people asking questions about universal credit. And that led to some inquiries about saying, listen, we really like this. We wish we could do that for the current benefit system and build in the additional complexity and comprehensiveness of covering all of those benefits. So Lewisham Borough Council was our first client way back in 2013. They wanted us to work with their benefit cap pilot. They wanted a system that helped to show, as a universal credit pilot, residents affected by the benefit cap, what would happen to their income as they moved into work. And what would happen if they didn't as well. So you've got a combination of the stick if they're worse off if they don't do anything, but if they do something, they can be so much better off. And by kind of through all of the work of the advisors of Lewisham, but also a tool that helped advisors to get through cases and explain to people what was happening in a very fast and engaging way, they're able to help 3 times as many households into work. And that's really the first version of the software that I think was sort of commercially available. In 2014, we were benchmarked as being the fastest in the market in terms of being able to get through a case. We grew our market share into working with welfare to work providers and housing associations as well as local authorities. And with the support of Oxford City Council, we were able to add the budgeting module, so the ability to look at income and expenditure, both sides of the equation when you're trying to show people how they can be better off. In 2015, we grew that to look at, use the same engine to carry out data analysis and do policy analysis, primarily for local authorities using housing benefit data. We're doing an awful lot of work, Zoe, Leo, and the rest of the team on modelling council tax support schemes, looking at discretionary housing payments, how they can be better allocated, and how local authorities can be sure that people are, their advisors are allocating discretionary payments according to the policy that's been set. And then in 2016, we took on board all of the feedback that we picked up over the last 4 years, and we decided to rebuild a system from scratch. Now that's quite a big choice, so I want to go on to explain why we felt that was the best thing rather than continue to tweak and build on version 2. I think the first thing to say is that, you know, my idea in working on universal credit initially was to try and simplify the benefit system. And what I've learned as we look at the journey from policy into practice is the benefit system is incredibly complex, and there are serious pressures that push toward growing complexity. That's been driven by welfare reform over the last few years. So you've got not just universal credit coming in, but a whole range of reforms all the way from 2016, 2017, where we are now, and that will continue all the way to 2018. And no one really wants to know how, you know, a user doesn't necessarily want to know all the ins and outs of all of these policies. They want to just know how it affects them. So the reason we wanted to move toward and rebuild from scratch is, as I said, the welfare system, the need for it is there. The welfare system is as complex as ever. It's changing all the time. It's broader than just the current system or universal credit. Some of the new things that are coming in around the focus on discretionary support, some of the tie-ins to how free school meals will be allocated and the impact that has on the pupil premium and other things, the changing level of support for disabled people. We wanted to build a system where you could build in new policies in a way that allowed us to continue to be the most comprehensive piece of software on the market, and do that in a way that didn't rely upon coming from a current system or a universal credit mindset. You could just add in each policy one by one. We wanted to include flexibility for users. Employment advisors are a group we've worked with, and then as we began to work with housing associations, we began to work with more and more welfare rights experts. What we saw was that the needs of each of those two types of users was slightly different. So people want self-service. Employment advisors want an easy and engaging way to work with people, and welfare rights experts want to know that to go into complete depth and complete comprehensiveness. So alongside this, we had a greater demand for guidance. We were already building in things like job search and links into local support. But you'll see in this version how we take that one level further and provide even more guidance for advisors to be able to take forward, because they can't be expected to know all of the range of local support that might be around them, and that's what the system tries to bring in for them. We wanted to link into our analytical tools, so if you're using our data analysis, you can tie in, you can go and visit someone that's been identified as being in need through our analysis and just bring up the calculator to provide personalized guidance for them. And fundamentally we wanted to future-proof the infrastructure and the user interface to build in new integrations and new modules, because we're being asked for these additional features and additional tweaks over time to deliver a very modern, a very intuitive user experience. And there's a quote there from at the bottom of this slide from the founders of Google, which when they went public, they said that search, the reason they went public was that search is only 5% solved, and that's when Google was the best in the business and was changing all of our lives. But they recognized there was so much more to go. And I think in the context of how software can help drive and deliver better policy outcomes, you know, as far as we've come as policy and practice, we're still probably only about 5, 10, 15% of the way there, and the room to go much further is really our ambition. And just a huge thanks to all of the work that Leo and Zoe have put into this new version and into this new upgrade. Janet, I'm going to ask you to, for everyone on the call, it'd be really helpful just to kick off with your views of what you think is useful about having a better off calculator or a benefit calculator and what you use it for. Janet?
Okay, so the poll is what are the most important uses of a calculator for your organisation, and I shall launch that to you now. Hopefully you can see that on your screen, and please do choose select as many answers here that apply. So what are the most important uses of a calculator for your organisation? Assisting claimant transfer to universal credit, helping people into work, carrying out a pre-tenancy check, improving customers' circumstances, and or helping advisors to engage with customers. As I talk, I can see you all voting. Thank you very much for taking part. We'll just leave it a little bit longer now. This is certainly a very interesting point for the team back at the office. And also, I'm sure you'll find it very interesting yourselves to hear what your peers and colleagues say. I'll just give it a couple more seconds and then I'll close the poll and we can go on from there. Lovely. Okay, so here we go. So let me share the answers. There you go, Deven.
We actually can't. Do you want to just talk through briefly what they are, Janet?
Okay, sure. So, so the answers then. So what are the most important uses of a calculator for your organisation? 65% of you said assisting claimant transfer to UC. Also a large proportion at 69% is improving customers' circumstances. Then at 62% helping people into work, and then joint 58% carrying out a pre-tenancy check and helping advisors to engage with customers. So the headline figure there is improving customer circumstances is 69% of the answers. So thank you very much, everybody there.
Great, thanks. And I think that just shows how all of these sort of key features and key benefits are useful to different organizations in different ways, and sometimes they're useful to all of these are relevant to the same organization because they're all quite high in terms of their percentages. And we'll try and talk through each one of those as Zoe and Leo move on to cases. Just before we do that, I think it's helpful just to talk about the concept behind our work, which is to say that the core use of a benefit calculator historically has always been income maximization, and that's something we do by being as comprehensive as possible as any other piece of software within the marketplace, and the new version takes that even further. I think for me the drivers behind this new version was always around continuing to make sure that despite it being as comprehensive as ever, it was still fast, engaging and easy for people to use, because if people don't use it, if advisors don't want to use it, then you won't be able to get the benefits from it. And to make sure that, again, rather than it being about what can the system do for you, income maximization is also about helping people think about what they could do to improve their own circumstances, so delivering and providing action-oriented advice. This slide talks through a few of the benefits. It's much more of a takeaway slide. I think you'll see some of these as we walk through the cases. And then the idea behind it fundamentally is to help improve the engagement that you're able to achieve, your advisors are able to achieve, and your organization is able to achieve between the organization and the residents, the clients and customers that you work with a view to helping your customers improve their situation, but also helping the organization to manage rent arrears, to increase income. For example, if you're a welfare to work provider, you can help people into work, and to get the most out of staff time, it being fast, easy, engaging, and easy to use. I'm going to hand over to Leo now to talk through three cases. Fundamentally, these three cases is one where there's a proportion of tenants that require limited support, maybe a bit of guidance about how the benefit system works as they move into work, which Leo is going to talk through. Then a group of clients who need some support, maybe around looking at a pre-tenancy check. They know enough about their own circumstances, but how that interacts with the organization, they might need a bit of guidance on. And then Zoe's going to work through a complex case, the kind of one that, again, Zoe knows inside out, but these are the 20% of cases that take up 80% of the time for a welfare advisor. Leo, I'm going to hand over to you. Do you want to flick the screen across to the software?
Yeah. Okay, thank you for that, Deven. So I'm going to first do two cases. The first one is going to represent the 30% that need some support, and this is to basically highlight the problem that many organizations that use our software face, where organizations and individuals need to make quick assessments of different employment prospects, and to basically have the confidence to go out into the world of work and see how that would affect the household circumstances. So we have the case here, and this is Abby, She's a single mother, and the youngest child is age 4, and she's looking to move back into the job market. So she basically needs to know how her current situation stands and how moving into work will help her and her family. So what we do, we've got the household details. We've entered some property details in, 3-bedroom, social rented house, currently no income or earnings. And then we go to results and reports, and we've got the detailed breakdown of this situation. But the key part here is to look at how Abby's situation will change depending on the number of hours that she's offered and the wage. So we've set that here at 720. And say, for example, 1 month Abby was offered 14 hours a week. We simply move the slider across, and we see that she'll be better off by £120 a week, whereas if there was another week where she was offered 35 hours a week of work, she would actually be better off by 660. And you can see in the graph what's happening to her benefits. So this is a quick assessment of the changes of circumstances. And say and now that there's a change of circumstances, Abby is now needing to claim universal credit. We simply just flick across to the new system, and the case reloads with the change of circumstances on the universal credit. And as the flexible job market, we can simply change this for each job prospect.
Thanks, and I just wanted to give that a bit of context. I think the driver behind this was Ashley at G4S, who are a client of ours, wanting to talk about how as people move into work, he wants to show them perhaps not just one scenario of moving into work, but 2 or 3 very quickly. And the idea behind having the slider feature is that you can do that very quickly, and hopefully you could see how the calculations were being updated on the fly to really make that really powerful and really easy.
Yeah.
Thanks, Leo.
No problem. So we're going to go to the next case. Now this is for a couple, Belinda and Carl, and the driver behind this and the challenge that many organisations were facing were around pre-tenancy agreements. Is a tenancy sustainable? And what rent is most appropriate for the household? So a quick overview of the case. This is Belinda and Carl. They're a young couple with 2 children. Carl is in a support group of ESA, and Belinda cares for him. So for this reason, they currently are living at home with their parents, so there's no housing costs. They don't have any income and earnings for this reason, and their current situation leaves them with an income of £400 a week. Now, users of version 2 of our software will notice that we have a budget tab here at the top. And this is as a result of the feedback that we received, that we needed to integrate the 2 systems so that we can make more accurate assessments when calculating household finances. So what I've done here is I've added some adult care costs for Carl's disability, and I've also added some housekeeping, some groceries, because although Carl is at home with his parents, he still pays for his family's groceries. So if I flip back to results and reports, what we need to now see is what property can Belinda and Carl afford. So to do that, we've added a new feature called scenarios, where we add a new scenario, and what that does is that replicates the case that was in the current situation and allows us to change any input that's already been entered. So if I go to property details, rather than having no housing costs, I'm going to change the sector to social rent, and I'm going to see first a 2-bedroom property, and a 2-bedroom property at £800 a month, and see what's going to happen to their household finances. But just to make a case a bit more realistic, I'm going to go to budget by clicking on the tab at the top, and I'm going to add some utility bills to make the case more realistic and get a better understanding of Belinda and Carl's prospects of moving into a new property. So I've just added those there. I'm going to go to results and reports, and we can show you what's going on with the graph at the bottom. So you can see that the income of Belinda and Carl has increased, but their after cost amount, which is highlighted on the right of the side, but that automatically updates as any input is entered, is actually gone down. So we can see that So that we can see that Belinda and Carl can afford this property, but this isn't their ideal situation. They want to see if they can afford a 3-bedroom property so that their 2 kids can, when they grow up, they can have their own room, but also in the short term so Carl's parents could come out and stay. So I'm going to add another scenario, and I'm going to go back to property details, and rather than putting in a 2-bedroom property, I'm going to put in a 3-bedroom property. Rather than £800, we're going to make the rent £1,000. And I'm going to go back into budget to add the utility bills to see if they can afford this larger property. So we go back to results and reports. We see the graph there. Their income has increased slightly, and their after cost amount has gone slightly down. So just to raise your attention to this graph, as in all cases, as in version 2, we can flip to the surplus and shortfall. So that's quite powerful to see how the income has increased, but the after cost amount has actually gone down. So now we can see both for the individual, the household, and the organisation has enough information to move forward with the tenancy and to decide which property should be taken out. So.
And I think, again, the feedback from this came from talking to our housing association clients for a number of years who, as pressure on housing associations grows, the emphasis on letting the right properties to the right tenants has increased. So this is the kind of tool that I think would really help with the pre-tenancy scenario. As you can see, you can compare a couple of scenarios side by side. Again, if they're moving out of home, it looks like scenario 2 would leave them with most income after costs. And that's a really powerful tool. And again, you can compare multiple scenarios. So you could add a 4th scenario to this quite easily. And the benefit of that is people find themselves in tenancies that they're more able to sustain. Zoe, do you want to talk through the 3rd case now?
Yeah, thanks, Deven. This case is designed to illustrate a more complex benefit situation. And what I would like to highlight on this case is how the calculator contains information for you to actually see what's going on with somebody's benefits. This will be most relevant to welfare support officers, but tenancy officers, housing officers, anybody who is finding that their role is increasingly supporting and advising tenants. And this will actually happen to a greater and greater extent as universal credit's rolled out and traditional sources of support at housing benefit sections and DWP are no longer available. And I know that this is a problem that lots of our housing association clients are facing at the moment. This person's Deborah, and Deborah has got 3 children and her eldest child and his partner also lives at her house. Deborah lives in a 4-bedroom social rented property and she does a bit of self-employed work as well. Deborah had always managed to pay her rent on time and be in charge of her finances, but the transfer to universal credit has meant that she's building up arrears. And the housing officer can see that this isn't just to do with the 7-week wait. This is also an ongoing situation. So the housing officer goes to see Deborah to actually try and analyse what's going on. And straight away we can see, if we look at this graph, that Deborah's obviously been hit pretty badly by universal credit. We expect with any new benefit system that some people win, some will gain, but we don't usually expect to see a difference like this. So the benefit officer housing officer would like to go into further detail. And what I want to show you is how this calculator facilitates that. If we go to universal credit, we can do this analysis under universal credit or the current system, but we're interested in what's happened under universal credit. You see these little eyes here, that indicates that you can delve further into the case. So if we press that, we first of all get a very basic explanation of what's happening with Deborah's case. And for many cases this is all you'll need, and this is all the claimant will need. But immediately we're drawn to the fact that there's a large reduction for income and savings, but we know she's only earning $200 a month. The next level of information is the expert calculation. And if we press there, we've put a lot of effort into the design of this, and I'd like to thank all the organisations that have helped us by letting us look at their manual calculation sheets. And we've tried to develop it in a way that you would do this calculation manually. But there are so many benefits out there, and it's very easy to forget the steps for each benefit. So for those who are not absolute experts in every single benefit, and I include myself in that, we've got step-by-step guidance. So you'll see that for each part of the assessment, there's a little explanation of what that step involves. So step 3, how income's calculated, income savings. The advisor looking at this can immediately see that there's a large non-dependent deduction, and that's because both of the non-dependents will now have to make a contribution under universal credit. But her eye's drawn to this, that the income is £1,006, but she knows that Deborah is only earning £200. You notice this question mark here? That means there's further information, so we can delve even deeper into this case. If we click here, we can see that Deborah's been affected by the minimum income floor, and this gives a complete breakdown of how it's been calculated. It shows the expected hours of employment, any reduction if she had a partner for his earnings that would be deducted, and in the end we can explain to Deborah that her income has been increased by £806 a month to assess her universal credit. So that the housing officer now knows why her income's reduced. And in discussions with Deborah, she finds out that the reason that she's sticking with her self-employment is that she's also a carer. And we'll go through some of the features of the system that helped the housing officer discover that, and those conversations with Deborah a bit later on. For now, let's put in another scenario and see if Deborah's better off if she claims carer's allowance. So we go back to household details. And you'll see just how quick this is. This is a whole new assessment, and that's all we need to do. Say she's a carer. We can look at results and reports. And we can see that previously, without carer's allowance, she was receiving £1,200, and she's now receiving £1,900. Now that obviously difference is not all to do with carer's allowance, but I won't do it now. We can go through cases with any of you who want further information on these more complex cases at another time. Just ring us. I'd be delighted to show you. But the difference here, just for those who are wondering, is because obviously her minimum income floor no longer applies. Any breakdown will also show them that it's worthwhile Deborah continuing with her self-employment, because most of that self-employment is then deducted due to work allowances. So the various layers of information on the benefit assessment have helped both Deborah and the housing officer see what's going on and see move towards a better situation for her. I mentioned some features that we've got. Yeah, I'll just move on to the slide, because I mentioned some features, some new features in this version of the calculator that you might find really helpful, especially for those officers who are involved in support and the more complex cases. I'm going to go over them quickly, and as I said, we can go through in more detail anybody who wants to know more information about these. The first thing I'd like to show you is benefit actions. We know that the benefit system is very complex. It's hard to explain to people who know about benefits, let alone customers, and actually sort of abstract explanations of benefits are not of any use to them. They're only going to really pay attention if it's individualized. And we've taken the information from the calculator to produce this individualized information. And this will allow the customer to engage much more with their benefit situation. If we look at Abby here, it actually tells her exactly what the contributions from the adults who live in her home was under the current system and what the changes under universal credit. It's got the actual figures for her minimum income floor and the actual hours she's expected to work. And I think that this, from our feedback from Housing Association, I think that this individualized information is really quite powerful. It actually engages the customer rather than them having to wade through loads of information on sort of abstract benefits. The next feature I'd like to show you is our barriers and support module. we know that housing associations, local authorities, back-to-work providers and third sector organisations are involved more and more in supporting vulnerable households. The support is very tricky because there's difficult conversations. You can't help a household unless you actually know what their full situation is. So we've been working with some of our clients and developed this list of barriers to moving forward in the world of work or any steps forward into a less chaotic life. And these can just feed into engagement by your customers. It actually gives a prompt to discussion and makes starting those difficult conversations a little easier. But more than that, these barriers also can be opened up to give further information on benefit implications and immediate links to support organisations. If we look at what's happened here with Deborah, it tells her the eligibility for carer's allowance. She can click on the link and go straight online to apply, and she can also click on the links to get advice and support from organisations who help carers. But we are very aware, and thank you for your feedback on this, that people who you can spend as much time as possible with your customers, but often a lot of that information is lost as soon as you leave the room. So we've created an action module which brings together actions that are entered during the assessment. So any little thing you think of while you're talking to your customers can be entered on the right-hand side. But also you can select any of the benefit actions or any of the support actions to be included in this action statement. And this is a really powerful tool to leave with your claimant. It's got dates of when completions of actions have been agreed, but it also gives them the information to take things forward. For Deborah, we've agreed 3 or 4 actions as we've gone along, but Deborah and the advisor have also decided that they wanted on this list the amount her son's supposed to contribute so she can show him. And we've also, she's also decided that she wants to keep the information on carer's allowance, just so that she's got the information on how to apply, the eligibility criteria and the support organisations. But this is all user generated. You can select what appears on this, but it's a very powerful thing to leave with your customer. And finally, I'd like to show you our budgeting calculator. And the impetus from this actually came from a housing association where we were in conversation with them, and they mentioned that they were spending increasing amounts of time on budgeting because of the difficulty in integrating monthly UC payments with weekly benefit payments and weekly earnings. And so we've developed this. It's a tool that allows you to put in weekly income. In this case with Deborah, we've got carer's allowance and child benefit. One's paid fortnightly, one 4 weekly, and it works with, it then looks at how that interacts with the universal credit monthly payments, and this bit at the bottom is the important bit. It shows over the next year where she'll get increased universal credit and where her universal credit will be less than average. And this allows, I think that you can see that this, together with the budgeting tool that Leo showed earlier, creates a really powerful suite of budgeting facilities to help you arrange rent arrears and to make payment schedules. Finally, another new feature, if I just move on, is our prints. We've got clients in numerous sectors, and with each of those sectors you've got a variety of customers. And so it's very hard to make printouts that are going to be perfect for every single customer. On the right hand, we've got a standard print. This is just the basic assessment, but we've left it to absolute flexibility within our print suite, in that you can choose which parts of an assessment you print, or whether it's actions, or for people who are going to be acting as advocates for their end customer, they can print the very detailed benefit breakdowns. And for all of these, you can choose if you're printing for the user or advisor, universal credit or current systems, and for which scenarios. There's the absolute flexibility built into this, so that you'll you can select your own prints for both you and your customers. Just before I hand over to Deven for the last couple of slides, I'd just like to say I spent many years advising customers and trying to explain benefits to colleagues. And it's been a real pleasure to develop this and take on board all of your feedback, all of the suggestions from our clients. And I think that we've produced a calculator with great breadth, accuracy, and with the features that I would have found extremely useful. And I'd just like to thank all the clients who put in so much time in helping us, especially in feedback, discussions with us, allowing us to observe their work, and in testing, and I hope you enjoy using it. I'll just pass back to Deven.
Thank you. Thank you. Huge thanks to Zoe and Leo for putting this together. I'm just going to go through a couple of the numbers on this slide, because I think they really show the work that we put into this. First of all, the number of equations that are being calculated on the fly, 4,190. We model the policies of 4 different government departments combined, including how all of those interact. We've been building in a whole range of different bits of guidance, so we've got over 30 different help alerts, over 60 different possible actions that are automatically generated on a personalized basis for each individual. And in terms of comprehensiveness and accuracy, this has been tested on using against GB data just to check that the comprehensiveness of that. So we've run the engine against over 34,000 cases. We've looked at anything that sort of came up awry, looked at it again, and just shown complete accuracy against over 34,000 cases, and we've done that a number of times, so it's actually been tested on many more than that. So I just wanted to just emphasize the effort and work, and a huge thanks to Leo and Zoe for all of the work and effort that they put in, and to the whole team that have been working on this. If you'd like to just also think through any questions that are going through your mind as we've walked through these cases, I wanted to just briefly think about, I think we focused more on the user and the advisor, but I wanted to spend the last bit just thinking about, for those of you who are on here managing teams, from a management perspective, what's most important for you? Janet, would you mind serving this poll?
Brilliant, thanks Deven. Okay, as Deven says, from a management perspective, what are the most important, what are the most useful features of the software? And we've asked you to select one here. Sorry, I've made it a bit harder for you. Your choices are the ability to record and monitor customers' outcomes, the management information to prove return on investment and staff efficiency, the ability to save staff time, maximising organisation revenue by helping customers make decisions, and providing debt and budgeting services in the same conversation. Thank you very much. I see that the votes are coming in. I think it's a little bit harder when you have to choose your number one. So I shall just leave a little bit more time for you to make your decisions.
I think as you're doing that, for those of you who have finished, I'll just mention a couple of things that were, I think stood out to me that perhaps we didn't emphasize, which is just the user interface and the fact that we went through 3 cases, one of which was very complex, in about 15 minutes there, so hopefully that emphasizes the speed and the amount of time that advisors can save by using this system. On the right-hand side, calculations were being made and updated on the fly, which I think is really powerful because, you know, if I change this, what impact does that have? Can also be shown and seen very clearly. And there's also guidance on the right-hand side at the bottom around what benefits people should be able to apply for. That emphasizes the income management side because that will take you, each one of those is a direct hyperlink to helping people to apply for those benefits online. And it's not just nationally administered benefits, it's also things like discretionary housing payments, council tax support, covering off as much as possible of the range of benefits that might be able to support people. Are we still working through the poll, Janet?
Excellent, yes, Deven, I was waiting for you to finish. We have most of the votes in now, so I shall close the poll and I shall share the results. I hope you can see the screen. I think there might have been a bit of a problem earlier. I can reveal that the most important feature that you have told us is the ability to record and monitor customers' outcomes at 42%. Second, after that is the maximising the organisation's revenue by helping customers to make decisions at 31%, and at 19% providing debt and budgeting services in the same conversation. Equally at 4%, management information to provide return on investment and staff efficiency, and the ability to save staff time. So a clear winner there in terms of the most important feature from a management perspective, which is the ability to record and monitor customers' outcomes. Thank you.
Well, that's really helpful, Janet. I'm not going to dwell too much on those results because I think that to a certain extent they speak for themselves, but I thought it was interesting the last 2 points about management information and saving staff time is perhaps reflective of to an extent reflective of who we've got on the webinar, because again, speaking to managers, I think they usually feature much more highly in terms of being able to make sure they're getting the value from the software. So I'll talk a bit about those as well as the highest ranked 3.2. I think one bit that, again, wasn't really there on the poll, but the idea that this is, just to emphasize that this is so important to us, some feedback we had from Gemma Johnston at Serco was that any software is only as good as its implementation. The support we've had from the team to bed in the new service has been a massive benefit to us, so we really want to invest and work with you to make sure that your organization, your advisors, and ultimately your customers and clients get the value from the service that we're offering. That's really important to us, and I think seeing it as just a software tool, hopefully it works out of the box, you guys can use it, but any questions, any training, any customization you want and need is something that we're happy to work with you on. I think the second slide talks about the organization, and it's about helping people to sustain their tenancies. We've really talked through some of the benefits of that, but when you think about it in terms of the guidance you're providing to people, and it sort of came through on the poll, is the ability to record and monitor outcomes, is to have that audit trail of the advice and guidance that's been given and that's been provided. So each one of those cases where you were showing multiple scenarios, all of those are being saved alongside one another, so you can go back to the audit trail. If you've given some guidance, if you've given something, you can see why. And again, if you've got queries, you can contact us in the same way that you do now through our current version of the software, through the chat feature, or through just contacting your account manager or the office directly. Before we move on to questions, actually, there were a couple other quick points I wanted to cover off. So I talked briefly about the audit trail. I did want to touch on management information and just say how important that is. So the ability to know that your advisors are using it and are motivated to use it. So we've got a whole new feature that, again, is difficult to demonstrate, but once you log in, the idea of receiving a welcome email, great, you've logged in. If you haven't, then there'll be a notification for the user and for the project manager within the client to let them know who's been able to log in, who hasn't, any issues you can raise with us, just to make sure, again, if you're buying a number of licenses, you're getting value out of those licenses and getting on top of that early on. With features and hey, did you know you could also, so as new features are added, all of your advisors become aware of them over time. I think also the ability to customize and make the look and feel of the software. Again, the design has been built around accessibility and making sure as many people can use it as possible. But if you wanted to change some of the colors, we've already done that for a number of clients who have asked to see what this would look like if it were integrated into their own system. So we can customize all of the colors and look and feel. And then the final point I wanted to make before we get on to questions is, if you're really interested and really passionate about the power of software, we're setting up a user group to take on board your feedback further. So for us, I think we've gone on a huge journey in terms of this new version. It's great to be able to launch it and share it with you all today. But for us, the journey doesn't stop. I'm not sure if it ever stops. It's about making it as helping advisors to go as far as possible and making their jobs as easy as possible. So we look forward to your feedback through the questions, but also if you want to sort of feed in more formally and take part in a user research session, please do email Janet or hello@Policy and Practice, or mention it in your comments now. Janet, over to you to field any questions that have come up.
Lovely, thank you very much, Deven. So let me get through these. So I have one question here, and it asks, I assume that this could be made available for customers to use, perhaps on the website. A question around self-service, I think. You want to take that, Lou?
Yep, so the calculator could be used both from the advisor, but also can be embedded onto websites and as well. So there is a self-service feature where users will be able to use it without needing to log in.
I'd like to also add that there's also an awful lot of customization available. So the system doesn't necessarily need to show all the fields for your self-service customers. You can have it as a simpler calculator without some of the more complex benefit benefit features we showed there. If you're interested in what level of customization is available, just ask us and we'll go through that with you.
Great.
Lovely, thank you. And separate question, for customers claiming universal credit, does the calculator work out the first payment data?
Yeah, it depends what you mean. If you're talking about the backlog and any arrears that are being taken off, no, because it's so personalised. We can work out the date, and the calendar you saw there actually looks at the date of payment, so it looks at the assessment period plus the 7 days. We have lots of, within the benefit actions, we have lots of advice and guidance about that waiting period, initial waiting period, and when the waiting period should apply, and how long they're likely to have to wait for their first payment. We haven't yet put in a function where arrears can be offset against that first payment and the particular budgeting around that first payment. It is something that's on our radar. I'm not sure how possible it is, and I'll obviously be contacting a few housing associations to discuss this further.
Yeah, and again, whoever raised that question, it'll be helpful for Zoe to get.
Yeah.
Brilliant. Well, the person that's raised the question has also said that they would like to be on the user group, so I think that's a positive outcome for that, certainly.
But that's fantastic, and if you can give me, I'll contact that person afterwards because I'd really like to follow up with that question.
Excellent, lovely. Thank you, Zoe. I have a question, more of a bit of feedback really, that the most important feature that we have found in college has been to have a one-stop shop without the need to know all of the welfare advice. So I think reiteration of some of the points that you brought out there. So thank you very much to that person. And I have also a question asking about the costs of the software.
Can I just go back to your previous question there, Janet? I'll pass the cost one on to somebody else. But so you mentioned somebody in a college. One of the features we didn't mention that hasn't been mentioned is actually that this version of the calculator is fully functional around students. So I'll let you know different types of student eligibility. It will take into account all different types of student grants, and it will also provide the disregards, automatically apply the correct student grant and loan disregards. So for that person from the college, if you're looking for a calculator for use by your students, or for you to advise students and see which students are eligible for benefits, we've incorporated that all within this calculator.
Brilliant, thank you.
I think it's probably helpful. I should probably deal with the question around cost. First of all, it's great to have the question arise because I think there's something in that I think people could see that there's value behind. A couple of things we've done around costs. One is to rationalise that across all different sectors. We did have, for the current version, different pricing models for local authorities, housing associations, and employment service providers. That's been rationalised to ensure it's just consistent across all three. It does obviously vary by the size of the organisation. It's based on the number of licenses you might want to use, whether you want an unlimited across the organisation licence, and the extent of training and support and customisation that you're looking for. But I think you'll find it's very reasonable relative to the value that the service provides, and hopefully you're able to see how much additional value your advisors are able to get from it. So I think the answer is to pick up the phone and let us know, or have us follow up. Let us know if you're interested in pricing in the comments, and we'll get calls to you by the end of this week to customise to your organisation. I think one comment we had that I thought that was really relevant to this from a client was, again, if this helps reduce arrears for 2 cases that they're working on, that more than for that particular housing association, that would have more than paid for itself. And I think they could see exactly how the guidance would have helped them to do that. So again, alongside perhaps a presentation, I'm very happy to talk to you about costs tailored to your organisation.
Thank you, Deven. I have a few more questions to go through. I think we're okay on time, so I'll carry on if that's okay. A question, what training and support do you give for clients? How do you run?
Well, I'll let Leo come on to that and just talk a little bit about sort of the work that he's done. And then I think I'd like to follow up with some of what's different around version 3. But fundamentally, it's about having your own account manager working directly with them, so the person that is responsible for looking after your relationship. Leo can talk a little bit more about how the operations and policy team are there to support you remotely, and then I'll come in at the end to talk about some of what's different.
Yeah, so on the calculator we have an inbuilt chat service where you can basically ask any questions, benefit related or technical questions. And on setting up the software, we do also, if it's a full package, we do also come down and do an in-person training session to your advisors. And in addition to this, we also run monthly webinars where we'll be highlighting new features, going through different types of cases, and really supporting you throughout that process.
And the driver behind the monthly webinars and the ongoing chat is what we found was that you've got, again, each of your organizations will have turnover among your frontline advisor staff. You want them to be able to come on and have access to a very quick overview of how to use it and the ability to ask any questions that you have of our team. And I think a couple of the other things that are particularly different around V3 is, one, aside from being easier to use and with more of the guidance built in, it's got the, as you log in, click here, do this, do that to complete your first calculation. It's got the recognition of that through follow-up emails and advice and support. And as I mentioned, it's got the management information. So if you're a team leader or a manager who wants to make sure you're getting the most value out of this, you can see that who's logged in over the last, say, month and how often they've been able to use it and deal with or have conversations with those that aren't using it, understand why, and feed some of that back to your account manager.
Lovely, thank you, Deven. I have some questions from our current customers. Lovely to see you, thank you. And so this, if I could roll these questions into one perhaps, is the new software rolled out yet to existing users? If not, when? And then similarly, when is the new calculator available for organisations to use?
Yeah, thanks for those questions. We're actually in the final stages of testing. The calculator is basically ready to use for all the functions that V2 had and more. But we're rolling out some of the additional features I showed you over the next couple of weeks. So we are currently undergoing some training for some of our customers, ready to get the software to them in the next couple of weeks.
Yeah, so April 1st is when our current customers who have been testing it for us will be able to have access to the full live, going from beta to alpha system. So the one that's live, robustly tested. I think if any of you are interested who we haven't been speaking with, again, just put your hand up, be part of that user group, have the opportunity to feed in, and let us know, and you can have access to it from April 1st. We're going to continue to be rolling out some of the additional features and some of the additional ideas we've had. So from the 1st of April and 1st of May, 1st of June, to tie in the next wave of integrations and development. But as Zoe said, it already does what the current version does and more, which is definitely the state we wanted to get it to before launch. And I think what you're going to be able to see is just add a greater value on top of that.
Can I just also say that we will be contacting all our existing users, the ones who aren't already planning the transfer over to version 3. We will be contacting everybody to work out when's best for them, when's most convenient for them to move over the next year. Some will want it earlier than others. We'll happily work with you and try and get the training on the new software delivered to fit with your timetables.
Brilliant, Zoe. That really chimes with some of the comments that I'm getting through from the audience. Thank you very much, everybody. One question here: if we already have the existing calculator and licenses, is this enhancement free, or does it come with an additional cost? Will it replace all additional calculators? Thanks.
Yeah, so the idea is we'll be running both systems parallel, side by side, for a little while, as you often do as new versions are rolled out. So again, people who are comfortable with the current version and want to transition over slowly, so the new version can take that time. But yeah, we weren't planning on charging anymore. The idea behind it is that through working and partnering with policy and practice, you get the sense that you're working with an organization that wants to continue to see value being added to your organization and to your residents. That's fundamentally what's most important to us.
Brilliant.
But do tell your friends.
All your friends. Okay. Okay, so I think that's pretty much it for all of the questions, which is great timing because we're at 11:26. So I'll leave it up there with the questions. If I haven't answered your specific question on air, certainly we will follow up offline directly with you. But Deven, back to you.
Great. Well, I just want to say a huge thanks to, first of all, to Leo and Zoe and the development team here, who have put a huge amount of hours, effort, late nights, Leo on his birthday, putting aside birthday drinks last night to make sure that he could be here and be ready to share really the bulk of what he's been working on over the last 6 months with you all. And then really ultimately to everyone on the call, all of our current clients, all of our future clients, first of all for all the feedback and input you've given us in terms of how to make this the best, to go from being the best benefit calculator on the market to being even better than that over the last few years. And I think that's just huge thanks to all those that have contributed. And again, please do continue to work through the user group. To everyone that we've been involved in this journey from when I first built the software back in 2012 by myself to something that's far more robust and far stronger thanks to all of the efforts of everyone that's become a part of the Policy and Practice family. Huge thank you to everyone.
Excellent.
And any questions, please do reach out. You've got Zoe's contact details, Leonardo here, and then a general email if anyone wants to reach out to me. Again, always feel free. It's just deven@policyandpractice.co.uk. Thank you very much, everyone.
Thanks, Deven. And also just a quick reminder to everybody that there is a very short 3-question survey at the end. If you would take just a couple of minutes to answer, that would be ever so grateful. Thank you, everybody. Have a great rest of the day. Thank you now. Bye-bye.